Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for coming together to immerse ourselves in this rich body of wisdom we call Torah. We are going to read through the English translation of this week's portion, which is called Korach. It's in the book of Numbers, beginning with chapter 16. And after we've read through the English translation of our portion, we'll have our collaborative conversation about it, sharing with one another what we saw, what we felt, and what we heard in the course of our walk through this text. So if you'd like to join me in saying a blessing, giving thanks for this moment, feel free to do so. Baruch
Baruch atah
Atah Adonai
Adonai
Eloheinu
Eloheinu
melech
melech
haolam
haolam
Asher
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 kidshanu
kitshanu b'mitzvotav
b'mitzvotav
v'tzivanu
v'tzivanu
la'asok
la'asok
b'divrei
b'divrei
Torah.
Torah. Amen.
Thank you, God, for the opportunity to immerse ourselves in words and deeds and relationships of Torah.
Amen.
So we're in the book of Numbers, chapter 16. I'll share with you beginning verses, and then I'll invite others to have an opportunity to read as well. Now Korach, son of Ishar, son of Kochas, son of Levi, betook himself along with Datan and Abiram, sons of Eliab, and On, son of Peleth, the descendants of Reuben, rise up against Moses, together with 250 Israelites, chieftains of the community, chosen in the assembly, men of repute. They combined against Moses and Aaron and said to them, "You've gone too far. All the community are holy, all of them, and God is in their midst. Why then do you raise yourselves above God's congregation?" When Moses heard this, he fell on his face. Then he spoke to Korah and all his company, saying, "Come morning, God will make known who is God's and who is holy, and will grant access to God's self. God will grant access to the one God has chosen. Do this, you, Korah, and all your band. Take fire pans, and tomorrow put fire in them and lay incense on them before God. Then the one whom God chooses, that one shall be holy. You've gone too far, sons of Levi." We're now at verse 8. Richard, if you'd like to read.
Thank you. Moses said further to Korah, "Hear me, son of Levi. Is it not enough for you that the God of Israel has set you apart from the community of Israel and given you access to him to perform the duties of the Lord's tabernacle and to minister to the community and serve them? Thus he has advanced you and all your fellow Levites with you, yet you seek the priesthood too. Truly, it is against the Lord that you and all your company have banded together. For who is Aaron that you should rail against him?" Moses went to Dathan and Abiram, sons of Eliab. But they said, "We will not come. It is not enough that you brought us from a land flowing with milk and honey, to have us die in the wilderness, that you would also lord it over us. Even if you had brought us to a land flowing with milk and honey, and given us possessions of fields and vineyards, should you gouge out these men's eyes? Will you not come?" Moses was much aggrieved, and he said to the Lord, "Pay no regard to the oblation. I have not taken the ass of any one of them, nor have I wronged any one of them."
Thank you, Richard. Mark Thompson, we're at verse 16, if you'd like to read that.
I would thank you, Rabbi. And Moses said to Korah, "Tomorrow you and all your company appear before the God, you and they and Aaron. Each of you take his fire pan and lay incense on it, and each of you bring his fire pan before God. 250 fire pans. You and Aaron also bring your fire pans." Each of them took his fire pan, put fire in it, laid incense on it, and took his place at the entrance of the tent of meeting, as did Moses and Aaron. Korah gathered the whole community against them at the entrance of the tent of meeting. Then the presence of Adonai appeared to the whole community. And Adonai spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying, stand back from this community, that I may annihilate them in an instant. But they fell on their faces and said, O God, source of the breath of all flesh, when one man sins, will you be wrathful with the whole community? Adonai spoke to Moses, saying, speak to the community and say, withdraw from about the abodes of Korach, Dathan, and Abiram. Moses rose and went to Dathan and Abiram, the elders of Israel, following him. He addressed the community, saying, move away from the tents of these wicked men and touch nothing that belongs to them, lest you be wiped out for all their sins. So they withdrew from about the abodes of Korach, Dathan, and Abiram.
Thank you, Carl, we're now starting with the sentence that says, now Datan and Abiram. Would you like to read there?
Thank you, Rabbi. Yes. Now Dathan and Abiram came out, and they stood at the entrance of their tents with their wives, their children, and their little ones. And Moses said, by this you shall know that it was Adonai who sent me to do all these things, and that they are not of my own devising. If these men die, as all men do, if their lot be the common fate of all mankind, it was not the Adonai who sent me, but if Adonai brings about something unheard of, so that the ground opens its mouth and swallows them up with all that belongs to them, and they go down alive into Sheol, you shall know that these men have spurned Adonai. Scarcely had he finished speaking all these words when the ground under them burst asunder, and the earth opened its mouth and swallowed them up with their households, all Korach's people and all their possessions. They went down alive into Sheol with all that belonged to them. The earth closed over them, and they vanished from the midst of the congregation. All Israel around them fled at their shrieks, for they said, the earth, the earth might swallow us. And the fire went forth from Adonai and consumed the 250 men offering the incense.
Thank you, Carl. David and Susan, we're now starting chapter 17, if you'd like to read a bit.
Thank you, Rabbi. Go ahead.
We open. And Adonai spoke to Moses, saying, say to Eleazar, son of Aaron, the priest, that he should lift up the fire pans from the midst of the burnt out zone and scatter the fire abroad, for they have become holy, the fire pans of these offenders at the cost of their lives. And they shall make of them hammered sheets as plating for the altar. For they brought them forward before the Lord, and they have become holy, and they will become a sign for the Israelites. And Eleazar the priest took the bronze fire pans that those burned to death had brought forward, and they hammered them into a plating for the altar, a remembrance for the Israelites, so that no stranger who was not of the seed of Aaron should come forward to burn incense before the Lord, and none should be like Korah and his community, as the Lord had spoken to him in the hand of Moses.
And all the congregation of the children of Israel complained the next day against Moses and Aaron, saying, you killed Hashem's people. And it was when the congregation was assembled against Moses and against Aaron, and they turned to the tent of meeting, and here the cloud had covered it, and Hashem's glory appeared. And Moses and Aaron came to the front of the tent of meeting, and Hashem spoke to Moses, saying, move away from among this congregation, and I'll finish them in an instant. And they fell on their faces. And Moses said to Aaron, take a fire holder and put fire from the altar upon it, and set incense, and carry it quickly to the congregation, and make atonement for them, because a rage has come out from in front of Hashem. The plague has begun. And Aaron took it as Moses had spoken, and he ran among the community. And here the plague had begun among the people, and he put in incense and made atonement for the people, and he stood between the dead and the living, and the plague was halted. And the dead and the plague were 14,700, apart from the dead over the matter of Korach. And Aaron went back to Moses to the entrance of the tent of meeting when the plague had been halted.
Thank you both so much. Well, Robert, we're now at verse 16, if you'd like to read.
Yes, thank you. And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, and take of every one of them a rod, according to the house of their fathers, of all their princes, according to the house of their fathers, 12 rods. Write thou every man's name upon his rod. And thou shalt write Aaron's name upon the rod of Levi, for one rod shall be for the head of the house of their fathers. And thou shalt lay them up in the tabernacle of the congregation before the testimony, where I will meet with you. And it shall come to pass that the man's rod, whom I shall choose, shall blossom, and I will make to cease from me the murmurings of the children of Israel, whereby they murmur against you. And Moses spake unto the children of Israel, and every one of their princes gave him a rod apiece, for each prince one, according to their fathers' houses, even 12 rods, and the rod of Aaron was among their rods. And Moses laid up the rods before the Lord in the tabernacle of witness. And it came to pass that on the morrow Moses went into the tabernacle of witness, and behold, the rod of Aaron for the house of Levi was budded, and brought forth buds, and bloomed blossoms, and yielded almonds. And Moses brought out all the rods from before the Lord unto all the children of Israel, and they looked, and took every man his rod. And the Lord said unto Moses, Bring Aaron's rod again before the testimony, to be kept for a token against the rebels. And thou shalt quite take away their murmurings from me, that they die not. And Moses did so, as the Lord commanded him, so did he. And the children of Israel spake unto Moses, saying, Behold, we die, we perish, we all perish. Whosoever cometh anything near unto the tabernacle of the Lord shall die. Shall we be consumed with dying?
Thank you, Robert. Justin and Linda, we're starting chapter 18, if you'd like to read a bit.
Thank you, Rabbi.
The Lord said to Aaron, You, your sons, and your father's house shall bear the iniquity associated with the sanctuary, and you and your sons with you shall bear the iniquity associated with your kehunah. Also your brethren, the tribe of Levi, your father's tribe, draw close to you, and they shall join you and minister to you, and your sons with you, before the tent of testimony. They shall keep your charge and the charge of the tent, and they shall not approach the holy vessels or the altar, so that neither they nor you will die. They shall join you, and they shall keep the charge of the tent of meeting for all the service of the tent, and no outsider shall come near you. They shall keep the charge of the sanctuary and the charge of the altar, so that there be none more wrath against the children of Israel.
I've therefore taken your brethren, the Levites, from among the children of Israel. They are given to you as a gift, and given over to the Lord to perform the service in the tent of meeting. And you and your sons shall keep your kehunah in all matters concerning the altar, and concerning what is within the dividing screen, and you shall serve the service as a gift I have given you, your kahuna, and any outsider or non-Kohen who approaches shall die. The Lord told Aaron, Behold, I've given you the charge of my gift offerings. I have thus given you all the holy things of the children of Israel for distinction, and as an eternal portion for your sons. These shall be yours from the holiest of holies, from the fire, all their offerings, their meal offerings, their sin offerings, their guilt offerings, and what they return to me. They shall be holy of holies to you and to your sons. You shall eat it in the loftiest, holiest of places. Any male may eat of it. It shall be holy to you. This shall be yours, what is set aside for their gifts from all the wavings of the children of Israel. I have given them to you, and to your sons and to your daughters with you, as an eternal portion. Any ritually clean member of your household may eat it.
Oh, thank you both so much. Jim, we're now starting verse 12, if you'd like to read.
Thank you, Rabbi. All the best of the new oil, wine, and grain, the choice parts that they present to God, I give to you. The first fruits of everything in their land that they bring to God shall be yours. Every one of your household who is clean may eat them. Everything that has been prescribed in Israel shall be yours. The first issue of the womb of every being, man or beast, that is offered to God shall be yours, but you shall have the firstborn of man redeemed, and you shall also have the firstling of unclean animals redeemed. Take as a redemption price from the age of 1 month up the money equivalent of 5 shekels by the sanctuary weight, which is 20 gerahs. But the firstling of cattle, sheep, or goats may not be redeemed. They are consecrated. You shall dash their blood against the altar and turn their fat into smoke as an offering by fire for a pleasing odor to God. But their meat shall be yours. It shall be yours like the beast of elevation offering and like the right thigh.
Thank you, Jim. Catherine, we're at verse 19.
Thank you, Rabbi. All the sacred gifts that the Israelites set aside for the Lord, I give to you, to your sons, and to the daughters that are with you, as a due for all time. It shall be an everlasting covenant of salt before the Lord for you and for your offspring as well. And the Lord said to Aaron, You shall, however, have no territorial share among them or own any portion in their midst. I am your portion and your share among the Israelites. And to the Levites, I hereby give all the titles in Israel as their share in return for the services that they perform, the services of the tent of meeting. Henceforth, Israelites shall not trespass on the tent of meeting and thus incur guilt and die. Only Levites shall perform the services of the tent of meeting. Others would incur guilt. It is the law for all time throughout the ages. But they shall have no territorial share among the Israelites, for it is the tithes set aside for the Israelites as a gift to the Lord that I give to the Levites as their share. Therefore, I have said concerning them, they shall have no territorial share among the Israelites.
Oh, Catherine, thank you so much. Hi, Mervyn. Nice to see you. Would you like to read a little bit? We're at verse 25.
Thank you, Rabbi. God spoke to Moses, saying, "Speak to the Levites and say to them, when you receive from the Israelites their tithes, which I have assigned to you as your share, you shall set aside from them 1/10 of the tithe as a gift to God. This shall be accounted to you as your gift, as with the new grain from the threshing floor or the flow from the vat. So shall you on your past set aside a gift for God from all the tithes that you receive from the Israelites, and from them you shall bring the gift for God to Aaron the priest. You shall set aside all gifts due to God from everything that is donated to you, from each thing its best portion, the part thereof that is to be consecrated. Say to them further, when you have removed the best part from it, you Levites may consider it the same as the yield of threshing floor or vat. You and your household may eat it anywhere, for it is your recompense for your service in the tent of meeting. You will incur no guilt through it, once you have removed the best part from it, but you shall not profane the sacred donations of the Israelites, lest you die.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Our entire Torah portion for the week. So this is both a dramatic moment that happens within the community, and then we've also just read the privileges and gifts that are due the priests and Levites. So I'm curious, what did people pick up on? What did you see? What did you hear? What did you stumble over? What did you linger over in the course of our time together? So you raise your hand, I'd love to call upon you. Go ahead, Rose.
No, I'm the quickest hand in the West. Well, there are a couple things. First of all, the previous parsha sets the table for all of this. Because this wouldn't have happened if people were not shocked and upset about being, is that for me? That noise? Shocked and upset by, being condemned to die in the desert. So that provided fertile ground for Korach. This reminds me of when I was a kid. I'm the oldest of 6 kids, and whenever anybody got kind of too big for their britches, my parents used to say, "Who died and made you the boss?" And I think that that's what Korach is saying. Like, who made these guys the boss? This this scene of the fire pants and all sounds a lot like Isaiah. When he and the priest of Baal, when the whole thing with the fire on the mountain and everything, it's a very parallel story. We're gonna have a showdown. And so those are my thoughts. I also think this is you have to look at the politics of this. If the Torah was actually compiled in the 6th century BC after coming back from the exile in Babylon, I think if this was written in the 6th century, this was kind of a way to warn the returning Israelites that the priests were still in charge. So I think there's a political thing too. That's it.
Thank you. I hadn't thought about that aspect of it in particular. Thank you so much. And let me call upon Robert. Go ahead.
Well, thank you again for a lovely evening. And the same point, but I will quote a verse from Baha'u'llah. Do men think when they say we believe, they shall be let alone and not be put to proof? It's timeless. Every great spiritual luminary, as I understand them, have had the same issues. Yeah. The brighter the light, the darker the shadow.
Uh-huh.
and Moses' light was very bright.
Thank you. Well, thank you. Powerful image there about the brighter the light, the darker the shadow. Thank you. And let me call upon Mark Thompson.
First, a little personal reflection. I'm thinking back to my childhood when I remember in Long Beach, during Christmas time, the Jews had nothing to do on Christmas, so they were kind enough to show the Ten Commandments at the Crest Theater in Long Beach, and the entire Jewish community would show up to watch the Ten Commandments. And one of the most pervasive scenes that I recall from that somehow was Dathan, played by Edward G. Robinson. Do you remember that? Those of you who are old enough to remember seeing that. And I remember thinking he was a real creep. But now, as I review this Torah portion, I'm a little bit upset for him because he was sort of like the Apikoros of the community. He was the one who was willing to stand up and say, well, why do I have to believe all these things just because you tell me it's so? And I think it was probably his attitude more than anything else that got him into trouble, but questioning authority.
Mm-hmm.
That seems to be the thing that got him into trouble. And I'm wondering, even today, whether there's some room for interpretation and, as we're talking about in this Torah portion, room for ambiguity in how we review Korach at this time.
Okay, just in the notion of standing up to what seems to be arbitrarily appointed authority, or what are you describing it as?
Yeah, Moses as the point of authority.
Uh-huh.
That he's questioning whether he has the right to do that and whether he has the right to interpret God's demands.
Okay, gotcha. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you. And we've got Richard here, then I'll get to Laura, Carl, and others. Yeah.
This one little thing, I noticed early on there, somebody said, well, we're all gonna die. That's what happens.
Mm-hmm.
And the next thing will be.
Cannot hear.
What's up?
They said, everybody's gonna die. That's what happens to human beings. And then the next thing is, they'll get those, pretty cleaned up hands, and they have purpose. They're set up around as a mirror. And that something comes as a result of everybody's death. Something positive happens as a result. We all have something to bring. It's not just you're a bad person, but your time, and the result of this is going to be good for all of us, like the form of community would. And socialism takes a while to get itself out.
Thank you. All right. And now we got a whole lot of hands here, which is great. Okay. We call upon Norm.
So in the midst of this clarification of power and crystallization of the power structure, curious things happen. And by the way, I want to respond to Mark. No, I'm not nearly old enough to remember this Edward G. Robinson, or this was way before my time. In the midst of this clarification of power grabs, this was written by the priests. When Nadav and Avihu did it wrong, they were killed. They were incinerated immediately.
That was horrible.
But when Korach foments a rebellion, which seems to me to be a much more serious action, Korach and his people aren't killed. They're swallowed alive, and they're alive somewhere. I find that curious. I don't have an answer for it. I just find it curious.
Great. Okay. These are powerful images. And so I always appreciate visual images. I think I'm going to return to that in just a few minutes. All right, and I'm sorry, we've got Carl. Yeah.
Yeah, what struck me a little bit, and this is kind of a fine point, but I think it goes to, at least to me, for the message that's here. There's a difference between questioning authority and challenging authority. I had a little banner in my dorm room since I was in college that said question authority, meaning, one should always have the opportunity to ask for explanations and to ensure that the people who are running the show really do know what they're doing. Challenging authority can be the point where you get beyond the point of civil disobedience and you have outright violation of law. We don't recognize the laws as authorities, and we're going to challenge them. And so, to me, what this is Korah wasn't questioning authority; he was challenging authority, and that's sort of why I think he went down the glug hole. But I'm wondering if there's other parts that we're going to get to, or that maybe we've already talked about that I missed, that talked about the ethics and the appropriateness of questioning authority.
Okay, so you want to like make a distinction between the legitimate issue of questioning authority versus the destructive and illegitimate aspect of challenging authority?
Something like that.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. Okay, fascinating. And then let me call upon Susan and David. Then we'll get to Linda and Catherine. Go ahead, David and Susan. And then you'll need to unmute.
I had a question. I mean, it said that Korach is Moses's cousin, which I took to mean that his father was Moses's father's brother. And I just was trying to figure out that relationship. Who was Moses's father? Who was his brother? I mean, or does it just mean they're both descendants of Levi?
Okay, thank you. He's said to describe his cousin. I don't know the exact lineage, I'm sorry, but we'll get to Korach's status in just a moment as well. Okay.
Okay.
Susan, did you want to share something? Okay. Linda?
Oh, yeah, I just wanted to add the idea that arguing about God is it's like in the Jewish wheelhouse. It's like what we're made for. So to be, incinerated because you're just a born arguer and nebbish, I mean, it seems really unfair, So that's all.
Okay.
There must be something in Talmud that, understands how really ironic that is, to be punished for the very qualities that kind of almost keep you alive. So there must be some fun way to approach this portion, don't you think? Can't we have a little fun with it?
At least some way, right? Okay.
Yeah, somehow.
We'll get to maybe more than just one some way. We'll get to several. Great.
They're all so
And
cool.
Justin, did you want to share?
I'm just listening along. Thank you.
Thank you. Catherine?
Yeah. I actually really see this as a test for Moses and Aaron, more than for the Israelites.
Ooh, okay.
Because we know the Israelites are kind of quick to get impatient, to get dissatisfied, to question why they are made to go through this experience. But I think this parsha shows Moses and Aaron having to navigate between leadership as obeying God and leadership as looking after the people. And so the first time it's clear that there's this rebellion, and Adonai wants to make a point about it and show this dramatic earth swallowing people which in itself should be enough to dissuade people from any more rebellion. But then we have this plague that arrives. And, um, I was a little bit, I'm a little bit taken aback by the number of casualties in that plague. But here we need to see Aaron have some kind of spiritual power. He needs to assert some kind of spiritual power to stop this from happening. And I think that I understand that as a seg to what happened with the show of the earth swallowing up all the people. So I just see this as really about Moses and Aaron toward the end. And I also am puzzled by the mention of salt. Yeah. At the end of the Parsha. I forgot what that means.
Well, salt generally viewed as some kind of preservative.
Yeah.
So perhaps wrapping that into the image that it conveys. But I appreciate that you're now shifting the focus not so much on Korach and Datan and Abiram, but the focus being more on Moses and Aaron. So that always interesting to see how what for some people comes to the foreground and for other people's is something in the background. So thank you for that. Mervyn.
I wanted to follow up on what I think it's Linda who made a really interesting point about that a part of Jewish culture is debate and argument for the sake of heaven. I think the Hebrew phrase is like machloket l'shem shamayim, and that this isn't really expressed here in this parsha, which is interesting to think about because it makes me think about like sacred stories versus historicity, and whether the folks in these stories, if they were historical folks or are talking about historical folks, would have thought of themselves in the same way or would identify with the Jewish community that emerged. I think that idea of debate, it's old, but it's not as old as the stories of the Torah. My understanding is like it's probably around the Hillel and Shammai era of rigorous debate, but in a way that is loving. So if we go all the way back to the time of the folks in the wilderness, their conception is very different, and they may look into the future and be like, wow, that is so alien to our experience, especially in this fragile and vulnerable space where I can see how a story about if you challenge the authority that God has put in place, something supernatural will happen to you, and it's bad. It's not a good kind of debate. Yeah.
Fantastic. So I appreciate the fact that you've taken Linda's very direct and pointed, straight out comment. Our whole culture was about challenging God, and isn't that what in some form or another Abraham did, and how can we end up condemn it? And then you kind of refine it and expand upon it, saying, well, maybe there's a distinction between that kind of arguing and a different kind of arguing, and which is also, I think, what Carl was also getting at in terms of the difference between questioning and then directly challenging. I've got Anna here. You want to share something, and then we'll get to Deborah. Yeah.
When it comes to arguing, there's how do you do it? How do you argue? Do you argue with humility? Can you present your point in a humane and respectful? Can you argue with passion in that fashion? And see this mentioning about salt. Like I was thinking that salt mirrors the spiritual qualities that God might want us to understand. Like our commitment to God should be enduring and preserving and pure like salt is. That's part of the, I don't know all about the covenant of salt, but it's mentioned in lots of offerings.
It is mentioned in lots of offerings, and of course now it became a custom when you were greeting someone who's just welcoming someone into a home. You'd bring bread and salt.
Brand new house.
Oh, let me call upon first Deborah, then we'll get to Margot. So go ahead, Deborah.
Thank you. You know what leaps out at me is kiddushim, the idea of holiness. And it's let's see, in chapter 16, verse 3, ויאמרו עליהם רב לכם כי כל העדה כולם קדושים. ובתוכה אדוני מדוע, anyway, but that it has to do, there are theological implications, but it has to do with who determines holiness, who determines what is holy or who is holy. It's not up to us. And the questioning is the questioning of Adonai, and it's the questioning of or the implication of Datan and Aviram and Korach, that, they could also determine who is holy or what is holy, or how do we approach being holy. So it's beyond human capacity to make that designation of who is higher up, who carries sacredness with them. This is in the realm of Adonai. And, I think a lot of this has to do with the development of the Bnei Israel's understanding of Adonai and their relationship with Adonai and acceptance. But perhaps, doubt is a huge part of faith. So it's this progression towards understanding that God is in our midst, and it is to God to talk about and to direct us towards the sacred, and what it is to approach and embrace the sacred. Yeah.
Let me just comment, Deborah. So you're bringing in a whole new issue, which is fascinating. This whole notion about holiness, and it's interesting to think that the issue of holiness is being raised by those challenging the authority of the community's leadership, and so they are kind of throwing back, if you will, at Moses and Aaron, God's own words. You're a holy people.
Mm-hmm.
So now they're using that as a political instrument, if you to challenge authority. They're not questioning the nature of holiness. They're questioning the nature that the mere fact that we're all holy in itself, they're saying, means that we're all equal, which means that we should all have equal, if you will, leadership capacity. So
Mm-hmm.
it's an interesting, clever argument to make, for sure. So cover all that as well. And let me call upon Margot. Yeah, go ahead, Margot.
Well, I feel kind of what goes around comes around. I don't mean to be political, but there is a group in our country today that are just like Korach and his company. And just as Korach leadership would have been destructive to the community, I feel that this group, if they gain any power or control, would be destructive to our country. And I hope the earth will open up and swallow them up.
Okay. Yeah. You evoked some laughter from your.
Oh, I meant it to be funny.
And so I'm
But
going
I was serious.
Barbara, that was a very godlike emotion.
Yeah. Yes. I'd be happy to take God's place with this group that I'm thinking of, but I won't mention them.
Well, it's good. It's always good to try and contemporize this material to see how it works in our lives. And let me begin by first responding to something that I think was Mark raised about being the whole issue about Datan, and you said that you were upset for him, and the whole notion about questioning authority, which a number of people have raised. And so I want to share with you just a brief passage that Rav Kook, the first chief Israel of Israel in the 20th century, was also a Kabbalist. And I want to share with you what he wrote about this situation. He wrote, "The holiness of the fire pan symbolizes the necessary role played by skeptics and agnostics in keeping religion honest and healthy. Challenges to tradition are necessary because they stand as perpetual reminders that religion can sink into corruption and complacency. Plating the altar with the fire pans of the rebels is meant to remind us of the legitimacy, indeed the potential holiness, of the impulse within each of us to rebel against religious stagnation and complacency that can infect religion." Now, just to place that in some context, I mean, it's quite a statement out of context, but in context, it's good to remind ourselves the position that Rav Kook was in. Rav Kook was criticized by most of the Orthodox leadership in the early 20th century because he embraced those secular Jewish people who were coming to settle in the land of Israel. And he embraced them. He said, this will be a great thing, and we can embrace them. And the rest of the rabbinate was highly critical of Rav Kook. So he's making this comment, if you will, as a kind of a way to kind of legitimize, if you will, his position of embracing these seculars who are coming into the land of Israel to create a haven for Jews. So but it's standing alone is a remarkable statement. Yeah. The other thing I want to just raise up, David was talking about Korah. It's just interesting to think about where is this challenge to the leadership of Moses and Aaron coming from. So yes, Korah is part of this inner family. He's almost part of the royalty, if you will, of the Jewish community. So he's not an outsider. He's not someone who's been disenfranchised, if you will, from any role. Not only that, but as a Levite, he has a very privileged status within the community. I mean, he's going to be fed. He's going to be given money. He's going to be given as a Levite, he would be given a city. He would be taken care of. And he doesn't have to work the land the way other people do. He's exempt from military service. So he is a privileged character. And he's the one who's now challenging, if you will, this position of seeming privilege that Moses and Aaron has. So that's an interesting posture from which this challenge to authority should come. So that may, in fact, kind of, for some people, begin to color what Korach is really after, whether he's really speaking on behalf of the people, as he says, the whole community is whole. If he's really speaking on behalf of the people, or if he's really speaking on behalf of his own self-interests to get a greater power. Because if Moses and Aaron go, hey, who would be next in line to maybe take over? Oh, wow, you want to choose me? I'm not worthy. Okay. So it's an interesting study from that point of view. And then this whole issue about challenging authority and argument, I mean, that really gets to the heart of what's happening in this dramatic story. So the way I'd like to approach it over the next few minutes with you is to share with you that this year, as I was studying the portion, I was focusing on language. The language is happening and maybe the absence of the language. And so here's how I got started. Towards the beginning, we have this moment where after the challenge, Moses, in effect, seeks out Korach and he seeks out Dathan and Abiram to try and engage in some kind of conversation with them about the nature of their challenge. And perhaps let's talk about this, if you will. And he asks Dathan and Abiram to come forward. And so here's the verse that the way I have it translated in my edition here in English. Moses sent for Dathan and Abiram, sons of Eliab, but they said, "We will not come."
Yeah.
And the verb that gets translated, at least in my edition, as not come, in Hebrew is lo na'aleh, which literally means we will not go up.
Yeah.
So that to me, just as a piece of a literary framing of it, I thought was exquisite. Because what happens to them? They're not going to go up. You're right. You're going to go down. You're going down under the ground. That's where you're going to go. So in a sense, they have spoken their own fate. They have been careless in their language by saying, we're not going to go up. And by being careless in their language, they've sealed their fate, if you will. So to me, I saw again and again this fascinating play of what's happening with language here. And then this notion about what happens when Korach refuses to go up, and Dathan and Abiram refuse to engage with Moses. Then we know that the earth opens up, and at least a portion of these rebels are then swallowed, including Korach's household, it says. And then we're going to encounter in just a week or two's time when we get to another Torah portion. We're going to read it's going to say the sons of Korach did not die. It just has that line that's thrown out there. Well, what does that mean? That they didn't die? It said they all were swallowed up. And what's fascinating is that when we turn to the book of Psalms, we're going to discover that there are 11 Psalms that are attributed to the sons of Korah. And here's just one verse from one of those Psalms, Psalm 49. Such is the fate of those who are self-confident, the end of those pleased with their own talk. Now, it's almost as if these sons of Korah are now, if you will, bearing witness what happened to their father, and they are in effect redeeming themselves out of this dark place that they went down into with their father. They're redeeming themselves out of that depth. How are they doing it? They're doing it through the use of language, not merely through the use of this ordinary language. They are returning to life, if you will, through the exercise of exquisite language, high language, the language of poetry and the language of song. So their self-restoration is achieved not just through behavior, their self-restoration is achieved in particular through their refinement of their language. So I'm going to just pursue a little bit this line that I became fascinated with this year in particular, with that there's something in this portion that is teaching us about the value of language. And of course, when one thinks about where is all this happening, it's happening Bad Midbar. It's happening in this wilderness. But that word Midbar is derived from the word daber, speak. And Jewish tradition often looks upon this wilderness moment as this moment where language itself seems to be in exile, that there's a struggling to regain a sense of how to communicate, how to use speech in a way that is productive, holy, and healing. So now that gets us to the heart of this whole notion about Mervyn was kind of picking up on Linda's comment by saying, well, there's argument that's for the sake of heaven and argument that's not for the sake of heaven. I mean, argument in and of itself is kind of a neutral term. The question is, how do you use it? And in the Talmud we read, well, what's an example of argument that wasn't for the sake of heaven? Korach. Why? Because Korach refuses to engage in speech with Moses. He just participates in this one kind of posturing stance. Hey, who put you in charge? We're all holy. Who made you the big kahuna, in a sense? Okay. And then he retires from it. He won't speak anymore with Moses. And so that, in a sense, is what the rabbis are going to pick up on as the true desecration, the desecration of language as a form of engagement with others, the use of language to form bonds, the use of language to create inquiry, the use of language as a means of exploration, the use of language to question in order to uncover something you didn't know or understand before. And so the rabbis are going to look at Korach as someone who refuses that sacred tool that human beings have been given. They're going to look at Korach as someone who rejects the use of language, and not only rejects the use of language, but rejects the whole notion of inquiry and questioning and probing and exploration. All he wants to do is plant his flag, and that's it. He takes his stand, and that's it. And so just want to share with you the whole notion about what Rabbi Lowy, the 16th century mystic and Talmud scholar, he looks at Korach and creates out of Korach a kind of personality type, which he calls masters of dissension. These are people who aren't interested in engaging in any kind of discussion or argument even with others. All they want to do is state their truth, and that's it. They're done speaking. The only reason for speaking after that is to incite your followers or to make a statement of proclamation to the people that you're challenging. And so in that sense, Korach represents the death of language. So we do believe, as Linda was kind of teasing out of us, and Mervyn was also acknowledging, the value of arguments. We have this, in fact, the great rabbinic enterprise called the Talmud is driven by the engine of argument. But it's a different kind of argument than what we see happening with Torah. The engine of argument as it appears in the Talmud is as a way to explore another person's ideas and perspectives, not to defeat them, but to see that, if you will, develop new perspectives. And that's why the Talmud is so keen on not only heightening argument, but also preserving what everyone is saying. Because fundamental to the whole notion of Jewish law, halakha, is that whatever is being decided in any moment is provisional. It's never final. That whatever is being decided as the great Orthodox Rabbi Adin Steinsaltz said, whatever has been decided as a matter of halakha is but one of the possible truths that were existing around an issue. And it's only halakha because a majority of those who are engaged in the debate have decided this is the answer. But it's always possible for that answer to be displaced by another answer if the quality of the discussion and the argument and the searching and the exploration yields up some new greater perspective that's now going to change what that decision was. So there's no final absolute answer about anything. Everything is provisional. So, and the term itself, machloket, is based upon this Hebrew verb salak, which means two things. It means to divide, which we get when we think about an argument. We got two sides. There's been a division between two groups of two people. But the Hebrew verb salak also means to share. So in fact, it'll be used for a word that means a piece of territory that's been assigned to someone. Okay? It's your share of what you're going to get. So that creates a very different sense of the dynamic of what's happening in argument when we think about machloket. It's a division and a sharing. The division happens in order to open up the space so it can be explored. And the sharing is part of the exploration. When people begin to share what they're seeing, what they're hearing, and their points of view. That's the nature of machloket that happens in the Talmud, which is very different than the kind of posturing and proclamation and refusal to engage in discussion that Korach engages in. And the Zohar, the beautiful Jewish mystical text, states it so beautifully and so simply. It says, Korach repudiated the creation of the world. What do they mean by that? What the Zohar means is, how did the world come into existence? So the Kabbalistic notion, which of course is endorsed and reflected in the Zohar, is that at one moment, God represented total reality. That was it. And then at some moment, God decides to withdraw from the totality of that to allow something else to come into existence, creates what becomes known as a vacated space in which something other than the singularity of God can exist. Trees and flowers and bunny rabbits and goats and fish and frogs and human beings as well. And so all these differentiations come into existence only because God withdrew from the totality of reality and allowed differentiation to come into existence. So the fact that Korach now represents the opposite of that. Korach wants to represent a more totalizing expression, wants to represent an authoritarian type of expression, wants to represent the absolute, my view of the world is the only view that can prevail point of view. And so that is seen as essentially an assault on the divine enterprise, which is to encourage different points of view. So this notion that what the rabbis create is in contrast to the absolutist speech of Korach, is this multi-perspectival, view of the world, which is that the world exists through this multi-dimensional aspect. And it is multi-dimensional, not just in terms of the number of things that come into existence, but also how things come into existence. And how things come into existence, we see in the very first word in Torah, Bereshit. The word Bereshit is an odd anomalous grammatical term. It should be followed by a noun, and instead in the Hebrew text, it's followed by a verb. That's problematic. And if it meant to say in the beginning, it would be vocalized differently. Instead, it's vocalized in a way to be literally read as in a beginning, which now raises the consternation. What do you mean in a beginning? I thought we're talking about the beginning. You mean there's another beginning or multiple beginnings? This is thousands of years before we got quantum physics, which says, yeah, probably there were. Yeah. So the notion that the very first word of our sacred text is now telling us that the world begins, if you will, the world that we experience anyway, begins not with clarity and certainty, but it begins with ambiguity. And the ambiguity is there because not because it's a bad bit of writing, and not because it's an unhelpful, vague kind of writing. It's intentional. Why intentional? Because the ambiguity entices us to ask the questions that we've been asking. And so what's good about that? Well, what's good about that is that now we're starting to have a relationship with the text. We're now inquiring of the text. What did you mean in a beginning? And to be able to have those kind of inquiries is the beginning of a deep and profound relationship where together we can begin to search out meaning. And it allows us to now no longer just be passive observers, passive recipients. We now become participants in the creation of meaning. And so for tonight's artist, I chose Helen Frankenthaler. And Helen Frankenthaler was a remarkable woman and artist, and she at the age of 20, she's already immersed in the world of abstract expressionism in New York City with all the famous painters that we've probably heard of Jackson Pollock and Willem de Kooning and Franz Klein, Hans Hofner, Lee Krasner. And by the age of 24, she's already crafting a very unique bit of style and methodology. Instead of, as many of the abstract expressionists did, kind of create these thick layers of paint. What she did, she would thin out her paint with turpentine, and then she poured on the canvas, and then she would use window wipers and sponges to just move these pools of pigment across the canvas, which will then soak in to the canvas itself. And so, in that sense, her approach was to create a sense of spontaneity and interaction between the paint and the canvas itself. And I chose for tonight's session this one painting she did called 7 Types of Ambiguity. And the title is taken from a book or an essay by a literary critic named William Epson. And William Epson wrote this essay called 7 Types of Ambiguity. He was a literary critic. And what he wrote was that ambiguity in a literary work is not an obstacle to meaning. It creates space for the reader to participate in the artistic endeavor of meaning making. And she takes this painting and she creates these spaces. It's not this canvas that's just filled with paint. There's all this empty space there. And she wants to invite us into those spaces. She wants to create space for us. And she creates in her works what she called working false space, which means that she created these areas in her painting that look as if they're empty, but they function as part of the piece's depth and meaning. And she said that a painting works best depending upon how much working false space it has in depth, that there needs to be a play of ambiguities, because then the viewer's eye is drawn into the painting through these empty spaces, which are not really empty, but they're a layered part of the structure. And then if you will, that invitation now allows the viewer to help create the meaning, which is, of course, not my meaning that I see in her paintings, not going to be the same as Catherine's or Jim's or Margot's or anyone else's. And that's what thrills her. She wants us all to become inspired creators, if you will. And I want to just, that's what's happening here in Torah. Torah is set up not to provide us with the answers. It's not set up to stop us from thinking. Quite the opposite. It creates all this incomplete language in order to invite us to become participants in the writing of Torah. And this notion that of creating this work of art, whether it's on the canvas or on the page, that is full of incompleteness, that is full of empty spaces, that is full of ambiguities, is beautifully referred to by the philosopher Karl Jaspers. He was a psychiatrist, a philosopher, and he said this: "This is the vision of a great and noble life, to endure ambiguity and to make light shine through it, to stand fast in uncertainty, to prove capable of unlimited love and hope." And that's what this journey through Midbar is all about for the Israelites, and on a more mythic and spiritual level, perhaps, that's what the journey is for us. To go through this deconstruction of ourselves and all of our complacencies and presumptions and narrow points of view, and to create this, what the great Chassid Rabbi Nachman of Breslov said, this vacated space, because that's what God did. God created this vacated space to allow new possibilities to flourish. And that's what's happening here on a spiritual level in Bad Midbar. The deconstruction of the self from Egypt to become the possibility of the more self-actualized self, who can then flourish within what we call the land of promise. I have anyone, so let me just thank you, Mark, for putting in all your, and others who are putting in the remarks in the chat, so precious. This notion, of course, about to live a great and noble life is one that we engage in, of course, on an individual level. But our narrative is not a narrative of an individual. It's a narrative of a community of people. And so that is what our tradition in particular advises us, to always be attached to a community. To always, if you're going to study with at least one other person, so that you become so self-absorbed with your own brilliant conclusions, but that you'll be able to engage with someone who's going to help you create the vacated space, not only between you, but also to help expand that space within yourself, where you consider the possibility that maybe there's a new idea I can have, a new position I can have, new insights I can have. And so I'm so grateful to be on this journey with all of you. And I look forward to our next gathering. God bless you all. Thank you so much. I'm so deeply, deeply grateful. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Good night, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Be well. Bye-bye.